So in chapter 9, we're going to talk about budgets, and we're just going to talk about budgets conceptually. We're not going to go into the detail of how to prepare the budgets in this particular video. So first of all, we need to know what a budget is. A budget is just a formal written statement where we talk about our expectations of what our financial situation is going to be as we go forward. So typically we budget for the next quarter or for the next year. And we're using this budget as a method of communicating what are our goals, what are the objectives that we've agreed upon, so that everybody knows that we're on the same page. And then after the fact, the budget is used as the part of the control function that a manager has as a basis to say, okay, this is what we thought we were going to do. Here's what we actually did, what went right, what went wrong, etc. So we use budgets both in advance to try to plan and then after the fact to try to see how well we did. So what do we need to think about in the budgeting process? So one of the things that we're going to see here in just a minute is that the sales budget drives everything else. And so it's really important that we think about the sales budget and make sure that we know that that is solid so everything else can kind of fall into place from there. So when you're thinking about your sales budget, you're going to think about what's going on just in general in the economy. We're going to think about what's happening in our specific industry. We're going to do some research to try to figure out, are things changing? We're going to think about how much advertising we're going to do. We're going to look at how much of the market share we used to have compared to what we think we're going to have. Price changes, what have we done with technology? All sorts of different things need to go into that sales forecast. And again, that sales forecast then is going to drive everything else, as we're going to see here in just a minute. The other thing that we need to think about with budgets is that we need to think about how our budgets are going to impact human behavior. So if we include others in our budgets, if we include the entire organization, for example, it is going to help inspire performance and may help us then reach our budget. If you exclude people, it may actually discourage performance and we may end up not making our budget. So we want to think about, from a management perspective, how much input do we want from everyone else in this budget, and that may impact how much they are willing to work towards obtaining this budget. So that's one of the things we need to think about as well. So what we're going to create and focus on is what we call the master budget. And that is actually a set of interrelated budgets. We're going to look at what those budgets are in a second. But basically they fall into two classes. First is the operating budgets. And these are the individual budgets that are going to feed into the income statement. And then we have our financial budgets. And these are the budgets that are going to focus into the balance sheet. So all of that ties together in our master budget. So these are the different budgets that we're going to take a look at in this chapter. As I already said, we're going to start off with the sales budget, and that's going to drive everything. Once we know how much we're going to sell, that's going to tell us how much we should make or produce. Once we figure out how much we should produce, that's going to tell us how much we need in terms of direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. Again, those three costs that we've been talking about all semester long. Then that sales and production budget is also going to impact our selling and administrative budget, all of which is then going to combine, right? Because we have our product cost and our period costs, which will be involved along with our sales, of course, in terms of revenue, all of which is going to go into our budgeted income statement. So those are our operating budgets, as I just mentioned a second ago. And then once we have all of that, that's going to tie into our cash budget, which is also going to help us in terms of putting together our budgeted balance sheet to see where we're going to be at. So in this chapter, we are going to look at all of these various budgets. One of the things to think about is that the production budget is going to think about what we have in terms of inventory, specifically finished goods. Our direct materials budget is also going to look at inventory, but we are looking at specifically raw material inventory. So keep that in mind. The production budget and the direct materials budget are both inventory budgets, so they're going to be very similar. The direct labor budget, the manufacturing overhead budget, and the selling and administrative budget, those are going to focus heavily on cost behavior. So we're going to use our knowledge about fixed costs and variable costs. So again, we're going to start tying together everything that we've already talked about in this course in terms of the different types of costs that we have, product costs and period costs, and the cost behavior, fixed costs and variable costs. And all of that is going to help us to think about what we expect to happen as we go forward and we prepare our budgets.